The millionaire laughed, about to close the biggest deal of his life, but a dirty beggar woman appeared, pointing with a trembling finger. "Excuse me, sir, but this contract is false," she declared. Everyone froze, and his smile disappeared, like magic. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us from which city you are watching us. We continue. Raphael Müller adjusted his pure silk Italian tie as he gazed out at the Capitol from the window of his 40th floor office. The reflection in the bulletproof glass showed a 45-year-old man with graying hair at the temples and piercing brown eyes, marked by deep dark circles that not even the best skin cream could disguise. He sighed heavily, feeling the familiar weight of the insomnia that had been with him for weeks. His cell phone vibrated for the third time that morning. It was Helena, his wife, urging him to confirm the dinner with the Chinese businessman. "Li Wei. We can't miss this opportunity, Raphael. Chen Industries could be exactly what we need right now," the message said. He knew that behind those words there was much more than just concern for business. Helena was never content with being just the wife of a successful corporate director. She wanted more, always more. The Müller surname needed to be in the main. Business magazines in the most prestigious society columns, at the most exclusive events. And now, with the possibility of a billion-dollar contract with the Chinese, she saw the chance to finally achieve the status she had longed for. Raphael put his cell phone away without answering. His eyes scanned the spacious room, stopping at the expensive paintings on the walls and the designer pieces that decorated the space. Everything there screamed power and success, but there was something empty in all that luxury, something that bothered him more and more. "Mr. Müller." The voice of Pietra, his secretary, sounded over the intercom. "The internal audit report has arrived." "Bring it," he replied, trying to ignore the knot that formed in his stomach. Pietra entered the room carrying a green folder. Her eyes avoided, meeting her bosses as she placed the document on the mahogany desk. Raphael knew that look. It was the same one he had seen on the faces of several employees lately, a mixture of fear and silent disapproval. He waited until the secretary left before opening the report. The pages were filled with charts, figures, and technical observations, but one section in particular caught his attention: inconsistencies in international contracts. His heart raced as he read the detailed analysis of questionable procedures in recent negotiations. It wasn't the first time that internal warnings had come across his desk. Over the years, he had learned to ignore them, to find justifications, to convince himself that the ends justified the means. But this time, something was different. Maybe it was the sleepless nights. Maybe it was the growing weight on his conscience. The phone rang again. It was Helena. "Raphael, we need to confirm dinner with Li Wei today. He won't wait forever." His voice sounded impatient on the other end of the line. "Helena, I still haven't—" "Don't start," she interrupted. "You know how hard I've worked to get this approach. Li Wei is a very busy man, and Chen Industries' proposal is exactly what we need. You've seen the numbers." Raphael ran a hand over his face wearily. "I've seen the numbers, Helena, but something doesn't seem right. The promised return is too high for—" "Too high?" She laughed dismissively. "Since when did you become so conservative? The Raphael I knew was never afraid to take risks. That's how we got to where we are." Her words hit him like a punch in the gut. It was true. Throughout his career, he had made questionable choices, ignored warnings, turned a blind eye to certain practices, all in the name of success, growth, power. And Helena had always been there, pushing him forward, encouraging him to go beyond his limits. "Okay," he finally relented. "Confirm dinner." After hanging up, Raphael returned to the window. Below, the city continued its frenetic rhythm, millions of lives intertwined in a complex dance of ambitions and needs. Somewhere in that concrete jungle, new deals were being struck, fortunes were being made, and ethical lines were being crossed. The clock on the wall read 2:30 p.m. In a few hours, he would be sitting at the table with Li Wei, discussing the terms of a contract that promised to change the course of his company. He should have been excited, anxious about the prospect. Instead, he felt a weight on his chest, as if something momentous was about to happen, something that would change everything. The Fasano restaurant shone like a jewel in the São Paulo night. Raphael adjusted his jacket before getting out of the car, watching the elegant people coming and going from the establishment. Helena was already waiting for him in the lobby, looking stunning in a red dress that highlighted her slender figure. "Finally," she murmured, kissing him on the cheek. "Li Wei will be here in 15 minutes. I've had your favorite whiskey served at the bar." Raphael nodded mechanically, allowing his wife to guide him to the hotel bar. As they walked, he couldn't help but notice how Helena seemed perfectly at ease in that environment of luxury and power. Her high heels echoed on the marble floor, as if they were keeping time to a song that only she could hear. The whiskey was served exactly how he liked it, but he barely touched the glass. His mind was focused on the leather briefcase he had brought with him, which contained the contract that would change the fate of his company. The legal team had spent the entire afternoon reviewing the documents, and everything seemed to be in order. Still, that nagging feeling persisted. "Li Wei just arrived," Helena announced, her face lighting up with a calculated smile. The Chinese businessman was younger than Raphael had imagined, no older than 35. He wore an impeccable suit and carried with him an aura of confidence that bordered on arrogance. Beside him, an Asian assistant was discreetly taking notes on a tablet. Introductions were made, drinks were served, and soon everyone was seated at the reserved table, discussing the final details of the deal. Li Wei spoke surprisingly fluent Portuguese, with only a slight accent that betrayed his origins. "You won't regret it, Mr. Muller," Li Wei assured him, his eyes shining with an almost predatory intensity. "Chen Industries has ambitious plans for the market, and your company is exactly the partner we've been looking for." Helena, sitting next to Raphael, kept a possessive hand on his arm as she actively participated in the conversation. Her knowledge of the details of the deal surprised even Raphael. It was as if she had studied every aspect of the proposal. The moment of signing arrived sooner than Raphael expected. Li Wei had asked for the document to be signed right there in the restaurant, citing scheduling issues. He had to return to China the following morning. Raphael opened his folder, taking out the copies of the contract. His heart beat faster as he flipped through the pages, quickly reviewing the main clauses. That was when he noticed a movement through the restaurant window that overlooked the sidewalk. A woman stood on the other side of the glass, watching the scene with disturbing intensity. Her grey hair and shabby clothes contrasted sharply with the refined surroundings of Fasano. But it wasn't her appearance that caught Raphael's attention. It was her eyes. Eyes that seemed to pierce through the glass and stare directly at the contract in her hands. The woman raised one hand, pointing to the document with a precise gesture. Her lips moved, forming words that Raphael could not hear. There was something familiar about her, something that deeply disturbed him. "Raphael." Helena's voice brought him back to reality. "Is everything okay?" He blinked, turning his attention back to the table. Li Wei was watching him with a curious expression, while his assistant held her pen suspended in mid-air, ready to record the historic moment. "Yes, of course," he replied automatically, but his eyes returned to the window. The woman stood there motionless as a statue. Now she was shaking her head slowly in a clear gesture of denial. Raphael felt a shiver run down his spine when she pointed to the contract again, this time to a specific page. "Excuse me," he muttered, standing abruptly. "I need to check something." Ignoring Helena's furious glare and Li Wei's confused expression, Raphael walked to the window. The woman didn't move, keeping her eyes fixed on him. Up close, he could see the marks that time and hardship had left on her face, but there was a dignity in her posture that defied her shabby appearance. Helena quickly got up from the table, trying to intercept Raphael before he reached the window, but it was too late. He was already face to face with the mysterious woman, separated only by the glass of the restaurant. "Mr. Muller," the maitre d' called, visibly embarrassed. "Do you want me to ask security to remove her?" Raphael raised his hand, silencing him. There was something hypnotic in that woman's gaze. Without thinking twice, he headed for the restaurant door, ignoring Helena's whispered protests. "What do you want?" he asked as soon as he reached the sidewalk. The woman did not answer immediately. Instead, she reached for the contract he still held. "Page 47, paragraph 3, clause B," she said, in a voice that did not match her appearance. It was a polite, articulate voice that carried echoes of a different past. Intrigued, Raphael opened the document to the indicated page. His eyes scanned the text until he found the aforementioned clause. At first glance, it looked like a standard provision on technology transfer. But there was something. "The patent registration number," the woman murmured. "Compare it with the previous documentation." Raphael frowned, flipping quickly to the appendices section. That's when he realized the numbers didn't add up. It was a subtle discrepancy, the kind of detail that could easily be overlooked amid hundreds of pages of legal documentation. But it was there, clear as day. Someone had altered the patent records. "How did you—" he began, but was interrupted by Helena, who appeared at his side. "Raphael, what are you doing? Li Wei is waiting." His voice trembled slightly as he took a closer look at the woman. For an instant, something akin to recognition flashed through his eyes. "You haven't changed at all, Helena," the stranger said with a sad smile. "You continue to push people into the abyss, as long as it serves your interests." Helena took a step back, as if she had been slapped. "I don't know what you're talking about," she replied, but her voice betrayed her insecurity. "Dr. Bianca Andrade," the woman introduced herself, turning her attention to Raphael. "Or at least that was my name when I worked in your company's legal department, Mr. Miller, before I was fired for doing exactly what I'm doing now, pointing out irregularities in suspicious contracts." The revelation hit Raphael like a bolt of lightning. Now he remembered. Bianca Andrade had been one of the most promising lawyers on his legal team, known for her attention to detail and unwavering integrity. Her dismissal, which had occurred 5 years ago, had been handled by HR. He had simply signed the papers without questioning the reasons. "Why are you here?" he asked, his voice softer now. "Because I still have a conscience," Bianca replied, "and because I don't want other people to lose everything like I did." At that moment, the restaurant's security guard approached, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "Mr. Muller, is everything okay?" Raphael looked at the contract in his hands, at Helena, who looked ready to explode, and finally at Bianca, whose eyes held that disturbing intensity. "Yes, that's fine," he replied, making up his mind. "In fact, Dr. Andrade has just done me a great service." Turning to Helena, he continued, "Cancel dinner. Tell Li Wei that we need to postpone the signing. There have been complications." "Are you crazy?" Helena hissed, grabbing his arm. "You can't do this." "Do you have any idea what's at stake?" "I do," he replied, gently releasing her, "which is exactly why I need to check a few things before I proceed." Turning to Bianca, who was watching the scene in silence, Raphael asked, "How much do you know about this contract?" "More than you think," she replied, "and less than you should. But if you want to know the truth, you must be prepared to face the consequences." "What consequences?" "The same ones I faced when I decided to do the right thing," she said, looking meaningfully at Helena. "Some people will do anything to keep their secrets buried." A car sped down the street, momentarily illuminating Bianca's face. In that brief moment, Raphael saw something in her eyes that deeply disturbed him. Fear. Not ordinary fear, but the kind of fear that only arises when you know too much about something dangerous. The next morning, Raphael arrived at the office early. The night of poor sleep had left its mark on his face, but his mind was clear for the first time in weeks. After his meeting with Bianca, he had spent hours reviewing old files, searching for connections that could explain the current situation. Helena hadn't come home the night before. "I need to clean up the mess you've made," she'd said over the phone, her voice filled with a coldness he knew well. It was the tone she used when she was truly angry. "Pietra," he called over the intercom, "I need you to locate all the files related to Dr. Bianca Andrade's firing. It must have been about 5 years ago." There was a pause on the other end. "Sir, those files are no longer available in our system." "Like this?" "According to the records, they were deleted during A system update 3 years ago. We only have the basic employee record. Raphael leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. Files didn't just disappear during system updates. Someone had made sure to erase all traces. His cell phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. Buenos. Jerez Square, 10 a.m., come alone, B. Staring out the window, Raphael considered his options. He could ignore the message, turn his attention back to the contract with Li Wei, try to fix the damage from the night before. That was what Helena would expect of him, what the old Raphael would do without hesitation. At 10 o'clock sharp, he was sitting on a bench in the square, watching the children playing on the playground. Bianca appeared silently beside him, wearing the same worn-out clothes from the night before. "Thank you for coming," she said, not looking directly at him. "I figured. After a night of research, you'd have questions. How did you know about the contract?" "I have my contacts," she replied vaguely. "People who still care about the truth, even if they work in the shadows." "Why do you care?" "After what happened?" "Because there's more at stake than your company or my personal vendetta," she interrupted. "Li Wei is not who he says he is. Chen Industries is just a front for something much bigger." Raphael felt a chill. "What kind?" "A facade? The kind that uses legitimate companies to legitimize questionable transactions," Bianca explained. "When I worked at your company, I found similar patterns in other contracts. That's why I was fired. Not just for questioning an agreement, but for starting to connect the dots." She paused, watching a girl playing nearby. Her eyes softened for a moment, and Raphael saw a vulnerability that hadn't been there the night before. "I have a daughter," she said suddenly. "Sophia. She's in hiding. I had to send her away when the threats started." "Threats?" "After my dismissal, I continued investigating on my own. I discovered connections that frightened me. Powerful people, Mr. Muller. The kind of people who don't like to be exposed. First came the phone calls, then the harassment. I lost my apartment, my job in another office, my savings, but the worst was having to separate from Sophia." Raphael felt the weight of guilt grow on his chest. How many lives had been affected by his negligence? How many Biancas were out there, people who had tried to do the right thing and ended up destroyed by the system he had helped maintain? "What do you want from me?" he asked finally. "Your help," she replied simply. "Not to me, but to prevent others from being harmed. The contract you almost signed yesterday, it's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a much larger scheme afoot, and your company is about to become part of it." "And Helena, what is her role in all this?" Bianca smiled sadly. "Your wife has always been very good at seeing opportunities, Mr. Muller. Perhaps it is time for you to ask yourself whether she sees you as a partner or just as a tool to achieve her goals." Helena's reflection in the mirror at Maksud Plaza restaurant looked different that afternoon. There was a tension in her shoulders that her elegant posture couldn't quite disguise. Li Wei watched her from across the table, his dark eyes studying her every move with the precision of a predator. "Your husband is starting to ask inconvenient questions," he said quietly. "This wasn't in our plans." Helena took a sip of her green tea, buying time before answering. Raphael has always been cautious about new business ventures. It's part of what made him successful. "Being cautious is one thing," Li Wei replied. "Investigating the company's past is quite another, especially after yesterday's incident." The mention of the meeting with Bianca made Helena grip the cup tighter than necessary. That woman. After so long, she dared to reappear and threaten everything they had built. "The situation is under control," Helena assured, although her voice betrayed a slight insecurity. Li Wei leaned forward, lowering his voice even further. "Nothing is under control, Helena. Your husband cancelled 3 important meetings today. Sources inform me that he spent the entire morning going through old files. And now I'm told he was seen talking to that lawyer." "Former lawyer," Helena corrected automatically. "And don't worry about Bianca. She has no proof of anything. We've been making sure of that for 5 years." "Are you sure? Because it looks to me like she knew exactly where to look in the contract last night." Helena felt a shiver run down her spine. It was true. The precision with which Bianca had pointed out the irregularity in the document was disturbing. How could she have known? "Do I need to remind you of what's at stake here?" Li Wei continued. "This deal goes far beyond a simple business partnership. There are powerful people involved, people who don't tolerate complications." "I know very well what's at stake," Helena replied, her voice taking on a sharp edge. "I've been working on this plan longer than you have, Li Wei. Or have you forgotten who brought your proposal to the council in the first place?" The Chinese businessman leaned back in his chair, an enigmatic smile playing on his lips. "No, I haven't forgotten, just like I haven't forgotten our private agreement." Helena felt her face heat up. The secret meetings, the long dinners, the whispered promises in hotel rooms, everything had been calculated, every move planned with surgical precision. Raphael was just a piece on the board, albeit a crucial one. "Give me a few days," she begged. "I can convince him to sign the contract. Raphael always gives in when I insist enough." "Days?" Li Wei laughed humorlessly. "We don't have days, Helena. The board of Chen Industries expects a response by tomorrow. If your husband doesn't sign—" "He's going to sign," she interrupted, with more conviction than she actually felt. Li Wei studied her for a moment before gesturing to his assistant, who had been standing discreetly a few meters away. The young woman approached, handing him a brown envelope. "To ensure your motivation," he said, sliding the envelope across the table. Helena opened it with trembling fingers. Inside were photos. Her heart raced as she recognized the images. Her and Li Wei in compromising situations, confidential documents being exchanged, suitcases of money, proof after proof of her betrayal, both professional and personal. "This is blackmail," she whispered, her mouth feeling dry. "This is business," Li Wei corrected gently. "You chose your side in this game long ago, Helena. Now it's time to honor your commitments." She closed the envelope, her mind working furiously. Li Wei was right. There was no turning back. The plan had to go forward, no matter the cost. "What about Bianca?" he finally asked. "Leave it to me," Li Wei replied. "I have people who specialize in dealing with inconveniences." Helena nodded slowly, ignoring the voice in her head that told her she was crossing yet another line from which she could not return. After all, ethical lines were for people who did not have enough ambition. And if there was one thing Helena Müller had in abundance, it was ambition. Raphael watched his laptop screen with growing concern. After his conversation with Bianca in the square, he had discreetly hired a private investigator, recommended by an old college friend. Carlo Vega had a reputation for being not only competent, but also incorruptible, a rare combination in his profession. "You're not going to believe what I found," Vega said, arranging a series of documents on Raphael's desk. "Chen Industries has an interesting history. Over the past 5 years, they've acquired dozens of companies in different countries. The pattern is always the same, seemingly advantageous contracts, followed by a complete restructuring of the acquired company." Restructuring. How? "Management changes, internal policy changes, technology transfers," the investigator explained. "But the most interesting thing is the numbers. After acquisitions, large amounts of money start flowing between subsidiary accounts, the kind of movement that raises red flags in any serious audit." Raphael flipped through the reports, his stomach churning as he absorbed the information. "What about Li Wei?" Vega hesitated for a moment. "That's the funny thing. Li Wei practically didn't exist before 2020. It's like he just appeared out of nowhere, already as an executive at Chen Industries. Like this. Forged records, Mr. Müller. Very well done, but false. The real Li Wei, from what I can gather, was a Shanghai businessman who mysteriously disappeared about 3 years ago." Raphael felt a shiver run down his spine. "And Helena, did you find any connection?" The investigator rummaged through his briefcase, pulling out a few more documents. "Your wife has been meeting Li Wei regularly for the past 6 months, always in discreet locations, usually outside of business hours." He pushed a few photos across the table. Raphael took them with trembling hands. There were Helena and A leeway captured by the lens of a professional camera. Intimate dinners, close conversations, exchanging documents in empty parking lots. There's one more thing, Vega continued, his voice taking on a deeper tone. About Bianca Andrade. Raphael looked up from the photos. What about her? After she was laid off from her firm, she tried working at several law firms, but she was always fired after a few weeks with no explanation. It was as if someone was actively sabotaging her career. And her daughter, Sophia Andrade, 12 years old. She lives with her aunt in a small town in the countryside. Bianca visits her secretly once a month. From what I could find out, she fears that her daughter will be used as a form of pressure. Raphael massaged his temples, feeling the weight of each new revelation. Pressure from whom? I haven't figured that out yet, Vega admitted. But there are other people interested in this story. Last night someone broke into my office, they ransacked everything, but apparently didn't take anything. A warning? Probably. Whatever Dr. Andrade discovered 5 years ago, there are still people willing to do anything to keep it a secret. At that moment, Raphael's cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Bianca. We need to meet urgently. I have proof. He showed the message to Vega, who frowned. It could be a trap. Or it might be our only chance to find out the truth, Raphael replied, already typing a response. If you're going to find her, be careful, the investigator warned, starting to pack up his documents. After I started investigating this case, I noticed that I'm being followed, and they're not amateurs. Raphael nodded, his mind already formulating a plan. He needed to be cautious, but he couldn't stop now. Not when he was so close to discovering the truth, even if that truth threatened to destroy everything he had built. The old municipal library in the city center maintained an air of decaying grandeur. Its Art Deco columns and dusty stained glass windows silently bore witness to the encounter between Raphael and Bianca that rainy afternoon. The place was practically empty, except for a few students scattered among the stacks and a sleepy librarian at the counter. I chose this place for a reason, Bianca said, guiding Raphael through the labyrinthine hallways. After I lost everything, I spent a lot of time here. People rarely pay attention to a homeless woman reading old books. She stopped in front of a particularly old bookshelf, her fingers running familiarly over the spines of the books. But I wasn't just reading, I was storing information. With a precise movement, Bianca pulled out a thick volume of international law. The book did not open. It was a fake, a disguised box. Inside was a USB flash drive and several folders with documents. For the past 5 years, she continued, I've been collecting evidence. Every piece of information, every document I could salvage before I was ousted from the company. And I've kept digging even after, especially after. Raphael picked up one of the folders, starting to leaf through its contents. His eyes widened as he recognized certain names and numbers. This is the true structure of Chen Industries, Bianca added. A web of shell companies, fraudulent contracts, shady operations, all connected to very powerful people both here and in China. Why didn't you take this to the police? Bianca laughed humorlessly. And you think I didn't try? 3 different police chiefs refused to open an investigation. 2 journalists who showed interest in the case were suddenly transferred to other beats. And then the threats against Sophia began. She pulled a crumpled photo from her pocket, a smiling little girl with the same determined eyes as her mother. My daughter is the only thing I have left, Mr. Muller. I had to choose between fighting for the truth and protecting her. Raphael felt the weight of guilt increase in his chest. Why are you showing me this now? Because you're the last piece they need, she replied, her eyes locking with his. Your company isn't just another acquisition, it's the gateway to the entire local market. With your signature on that contract, they'll have enough power to operate freely throughout the region. And Helena, what exactly is her role in all this? Bianca hesitated for a moment. Your wife, she's not just an unwitting participant. She's been Chen Industries' main contact for longer than you might think. She pulled more documents from the folder, emails, meeting records, bank transfers. all dated long before the current negotiations. Helena had been laying the groundwork for at least 2 years, Bianca explained, cultivating contacts, manipulating information that reached you, those reports that disappeared from the system. It wasn't an update accident. Raphael felt like the ground was disappearing beneath his feet. His entire life, his entire marriage, had it all just been part of a bigger plan? "Why do you care?" he asked suddenly. "After everything that's happened, why not just move on?" Bianca carefully put the photo of her daughter away before answering. "Because some choices define us, Mr. Muller. When I first discovered the irregularities, I could have kept quiet. I could have accepted the bribes they offered me, but I chose to do the right thing. And even after losing everything, that is still my choice." A sound of books falling caught their attention. A student had knocked over his stack of reading material a few shelves away. But something about the incident made Bianca tense up. "I need to go," she said, quickly gathering up her documents. "It's not safe to stay in one place for too long." "Wait," Raphael asked, gently holding his arm. "What do you want me to do?" Bianca stared at him for a long moment. "I want you to make the choice I made 5 years ago, even though I know the price you'll have to pay." The apartment was silent when Raphael arrived home that night. The living room lights were on, and Helena was waiting for him, sitting in her favorite armchair. There was a glass of red wine in her hand and an unreadable expression on her face. "Where have you been?" she asked, her voice controlled. Raphael walked over to the bar and poured himself a whiskey. He needed something strong for the conversation that was about to come. "Looking into some interesting stuff about Chen Industries." Helena took a long sip of wine before answering. "Still obsessed with that beggar woman's theories?" "That lawyer," he corrected, watching his wife's reaction closely. "The same one you helped destroy 5 years ago." Helena's glass shook slightly, but she maintained her composure. "I don't know what you're talking about." "No?" Raphael pulled out some of the copies of the documents Bianca had shown him. "How about we start with the emails you exchanged with Li Wei in 2023, or maybe the records of the offshore accounts?" Helena's face paled for a moment, but then her expression hardened. "You don't understand, Raphael. You've never really understood how the business world works." "Explain it to me, then." She stood, walking to the window. The city glittered below, a carpet of lights stretching to the horizon. "Power is not something you gain by playing by the rules. It is something you take, something you wrest from the hands of the weak and the naive." "And me? What is my role in this philosophy of yours?" Helena turned to face him, a sad smile on her lips. "First, you're a good man, Raphael. Talented, charismatic, respected, the kind of person who inspires confidence. That's what attracted me to you in the first place, but it's also your greatest weakness." "Is my conscience a weakness?" "Your hesitation is," she replied, "always needing to think, to weigh, to consider the consequences. Meanwhile, others make the decisions, move the pieces, change the game." Raphael downed his whiskey in one gulp, feeling the liquid burn his throat. "Like Li Wei?" The name seemed to hit Helena like a slap. She quickly composed herself, but not before Raphael noticed the flash of guilt in her eyes. "Li Wei understands how the world really works," she said finally. "The contract with Chen Industries isn't just business, Raphael. It's an opportunity to be part of something bigger, something that goes far beyond your narrow view of business ethics." "Something illegal, you mean?" "Something necessary," she corrected. "The world is changing, and those who don't adapt will be left behind, as that former lawyer of yours found out the hard way." Raphael felt a wave of nausea as he heard the coldness in Helena's voice. "Do you really not care about what happened to Bianca? What might happen to other people?" "I care about results," she replied simply. "And now you have a choice to make, my dear. You can sign the contract tomorrow and be part of something extraordinary, or you can continue with this foolish investigation and lose everything we've built." "Everything we built?" he laughed humorlessly. "Or everything you planned?" Helena stepped closer to him, her eyes shining with an almost feverish intensity. "We can still make this work, Raphael. Together, like we always have. You just have to make the right choice. At that moment, Raphael's cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Carlo Vega. I have discovered something important. Meet me urgently at the office. Raphael looked at Helena, at the woman with whom he had shared 15 years of his life. Now he saw her as if for the first time, and the image frightened him. The office building where Carlo Vega kept his office was practically empty at that time of night. Raphael found the investigator in his office, surrounded by piles of documents, and with his eyes fixed on the computer screen. "I'm glad you came quickly," Vega said, gesturing for Raphael to close the door. "I've discovered something that changes everything." He turned the monitor so Raphael could see. On the screen was a series of scanned documents, old records that looked like they had been rescued from some archive. "Remember when I said that Li Wei seemed to come out of nowhere? Well, I finally found out why. The man we know as Li Wei is actually named Marcus Chen. He is the son of the founder of Chen Industries." Raphael frowned. But why use a fake identity? "Because Marcus Chen was supposedly under house arrest in Hong Kong," Vega explained. "He was charged with large-scale financial fraud in 2019. But while everyone thought he was serving his sentence, he was actually here, operating under the name Li Wei. And how does this connect with my business?" Vega picked up a folder and pulled out more documents. "Your company is not the first they have tried to acquire in the country. In the last 3 years, Chen Industries has approached 5 other companies. In each case, the pattern was the same: seemingly lucrative contracts, followed by a complete restructuring." "As Bianca said," Raphael murmured. "Exactly. But here's the interesting part. In each of these companies, there was someone at the top working with them from the beginning. Someone who laid the groundwork months, sometimes years before the official proposal." Raphael felt his stomach turn. "Helena. Your wife is more than just a collaborator, Mr. Mueller. She is the coordinator of the entire operation in South America. The meetings, the dinners, the documents exchanged, it was all part of a bigger plan." Vega typed something on her computer and opened a new window. "I've been able to access her old emails. The correspondence with Marcus Chen, or Li Wei if you prefer, began over 3 years ago, long before any mention of your company." Raphael slumped into a chair, feeling the weight of each new revelation. "Why are you showing me this now?" The investigator hesitated for a moment. "Because I just found out that they plan to take action tomorrow, regardless of whether you sign the contract or not." "Like this?" "I have received information from a reliable source within the company. An extraordinary board meeting has been called for tomorrow at 9 a.m. The official agenda is to discuss the contract with Chen Industries, but the real intention is to force her out. Helena has spent the last few months convincing key members of the board. They have documents that supposedly prove her incompetence in management, and—" A noise in the hallway interrupted the conversation. Footsteps were approaching the room. "You said the building was empty," Raphael whispered. "And he should be," Vega replied, standing up cautiously. The footsteps stopped in front of the door. For a moment there was only silence. Then the doorknob began to turn slowly. Vega moved quickly, pushing Raphael toward a side door that led to a file room. "There's an emergency staircase at the end of the hall," he whispered. "Go. Now, and you? I have everything backed up on a secure server. The password is in your email. Now go." Raphael hesitated for a second, but the sound of the front door opening decided it for him. Through the crack in the archive door, he saw 2 figures enter the main room. One of them was Li Wei's assistant. Moving as silently as possible, Raphael made his way down the dark hallway toward the emergency stairs. Behind him, he heard the start of a muffled argument. His heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was going to burst out of his chest. When he finally reached the street, adrenaline was pumping through his veins. His phone vibrated, a message from Bianca. "They've got Sophia. Help me, please." Raphael's apartment was like a minefield when he returned. Helena was still awake, sitting in the same spot as if she hadn't moved during his entire absence. But there was something different about her posture, an almost palpable tension in the air. "Where's the girl?" Raphael asked bluntly, his voice shaking with pent-up anger. Helena looked up from her wineglass, an expression of mock innocence on her face. What girl? Sophia, Bianca's daughter. A cold smile formed on Helena's lips. Ah, so she's already told you about little Sophia? Interesting. I thought she kept her daughter a secret. This is not a game, Helena. No, it's not. She agreed, rising with feline grace. It's business, and you're interfering in something much bigger than you can imagine. Raphael moved toward her, but stopped when he saw Helena pick up her cell phone. One wrong move, she warned, and I'll make a call you'll regret. What happened to you? He asked, studying the face of the woman he had once loved. How could you use an innocent child as a pawn? It just so happened that I grew up, Raphael. I learned how the world really works. While you worried about ethics and morality, I was building connections, securing our future. Our future or your future with Li Wei? Helena's face hardened. So Vega managed to figure this out too? Impressive. He's more capable than we thought. It was. In the past, Raphael's blood ran cold. What do you mean by that? Let's just say your private investigator has decided to retire. Permanently. Helena took a sip of wine, completely impassive. As have others who have tried to interfere with our plans. Raphael felt a wave of nausea. You're not the woman I married. No, I'm not, she agreed. I'm much more. And tomorrow, when the board meets, you'll understand exactly how much you underestimated not just me, but the entire scope of our operation. Raphael's phone vibrated again. Another message from Bianca. Please find me. I know where Sophia is. Helena watched his reaction as he read the message. She still hasn't learned, has she? Even after everything she's been through, Bianca insists on fighting the inevitable. Where is the girl, Helena? In a safe place, she replied vaguely, and there you will stay until everything is sorted out, unless, of course, you decide to complicate things. Raphael felt the weight of the choice he had to make. On one side, his entire life, his company, his reputation, everything he had built. On the other, the life of an innocent child and the chance to do the right thing, even if it was too late. You have until tomorrow morning, Helena continued. Sign the contract, graciously accept your resignation from the board, and the girl goes home without a scratch, well, accidents happen. She walked to the bedroom door, pausing only for one last comment. Oh, and don't try anything heroic. There are people watching your every move, and Bianca's too. When the door closed, Raphael slumped onto the couch, his mind working furiously. His phone felt heavy in his hand, like lead. Bianca's message flashing on the screen, like a beacon in the darkness. He knew that. The next decision he made would change not only his fate, but that of everyone involved in this sordid plot. And time was quickly running out. The night was at its darkest when Raphael found Bianca in the empty parking lot of a 24-hour supermarket. She looked even more dejected than usual, her red eyes betraying hours of crying. They took her from my sister's house, Bianca said, her voice cracking. Sophia was asleep when they took her. This is all they left. She held out a piece of paper with an address written on it. Raphael examined the paper. I know this place. It's an old industrial warehouse on the east side. It's a trap, Bianca said. They want to lure us there. Probably, Raphael agreed, but it might also be our only chance. He pulled a flash drive from his pocket. Vega has gathered enough evidence to bring down the entire operation. It's all here. Helena's connections, Li Wei's true identity, the money laundering schemes, everything. Vega? Bianca hesitated. I heard about what happened in his office. Raphael nodded gravely. That's why we need to act quickly. Helena thinks she holds all the cards. She doesn't know that Vega sent a backup copy. Bianca began pacing, her brain working rapidly. The council meets tomorrow at 9 GMT. That's when they plan to force you out. And when they expect me to sign the contract with Chen Industries, Raphael added. Helena made it very clear either I sign and leave gracefully, or Sophia pays the price. Then let's use this to our advantage, Bianca said, her eyes shining with an idea. They expect you to show up at the council meeting, to be publicly humiliated before you sign your surrender. About that, in the meantime, I can try to rescue Sophia, she added. They'll be focused on you on the meeting. It might be our only chance. Raphael shook his head. No, it's too risky for you to go alone. Do I have a choice? Bianca asked, her voice breaking. She's my daughter. Raphael picked up his cell phone and dialed a number. After a few rings, a sleepy voice answered. Jonas. It's me, Raphael. Remember, that favor you owe me? I need it now. Jonas Martinez was the head of security for a neighboring company. A former police officer, he had valuable contacts and a discreet but efficient team. I need you and your men to help a friend of mine tomorrow. Raphael continued. It's a delicate operation. I can't involve the police and yet. After finalizing the details with Jonas, Raphael turned to Bianca. You won't be going alone. Jonas and his team will provide cover. They are professionals, trustworthy people. And you? What are you going to do at the meeting? A bitter smile formed on Raphael's lips. I will give Helena and Li Wei exactly what they expect. They defeated man ready to sign his surrender. But first, he continued, I'm going to make a small modification to the contract, something our friend Li Wei, or rather Marcus Chen, won't realize until it's too late. Bianca frowned. What kind of modification? A seemingly innocuous clause about corporate transparency, the kind of thing lawyers routinely include in big contracts. He paused. But this one has a catch. It will automatically trigger a full external audit as soon as the contract is registered. And when they find out, Raphael added, it will be too late. The audit will have already begun, and with it all the evidence that Vega gathered will come to light, legally, publicly. The plan was risky. It depended on perfect timing and many variables beyond their control, but it was the best they had. There's one more thing, Raphael said, handing Bianca a second flash drive. If something goes wrong tomorrow, if I can't, well, here's everything. Every piece of evidence, every connection. Enough to destroy not just Chen Industries, but everyone involved. Bianca held the flash drive as if it was something precious. Why are you giving me this? Because you were the only one who tried to do the right thing from the beginning, he replied simply, and because I need someone to continue the fight if I can't. The sun was beginning to rise on the horizon, painting the sky with pink hues. In a few hours the plan would be put into action. It was risky, dangerous, and with 1,000 possibilities of going wrong, but it was the only chance they had. The boardroom on the 40th floor was crowded that morning. The councillors, in their impeccable suits, took their usual places around the mahogany table. Helena, elegant in a navy blue dress, was talking quietly to Li Wei in a corner of the room. Raphael walked in at exactly 9 a.m., carrying his leather briefcase. His eyes met Helena's briefly. She smiled, that cold smile he now knew so well. Good morning, everyone, began the chairman of the board, a white-haired gentleman named Anton Sales. We are gathered here to discuss urgent matters related to the management of the company and the proposed partnership with Chen Industries. Raphael looked at the faces around him. How many of them knew the truth? How many had been bought, manipulated, or threatened into participating in this farce? Before we proceed, Sales continued, there are certain concerns about your management. Raphael, that need to be discussed. With a gesture, Helena handed out folders to each board member. Raphael already knew what they contained. Documents carefully manipulated to make it appear as if he had made disastrous decisions in recent months. As you can see, Helena said, her voice professional and controlled, there is a consistent pattern of mismanagement and questionable decisions. The board cannot ignore— You're right, Raphael interrupted, his voice calm. The board can't ignore what's going on in this company. All eyes turned to him. Helena frowned slightly. This was not the reaction she had expected. So, Raphael continued, before we go any further, I'd like to present you with the revised contract with Chen Industries, with a few minor modifications that our legal department deemed prudent. Li Wei leaned forward, his expression neutral but his eyes alert. Modifications? Nothing substantial, Raphael assured, handing out the new copies of the contract. Just some standard clauses about corporate governance and transparency. I'm sure Chen Industries, being such a reputable company, won't object. Helena flipped through the document quickly, her eyes scanning for significant changes. Raphael knew she wouldn't find anything obviously suspicious. The real trap was hidden in seemingly harmless legal language. If everyone agrees, Raphael said, taking out his pen, we can proceed with the signing right now. After all, that's what everyone wants, isn't it? Li Wei and Helena exchanged quick glances. Raphael could practically see the gears turning in their minds. Was this a trap? Or had Raphael really given in, worried for Sophia's safety? His cell. Phone vibrated discreetly in his pocket. A message from Jonas. Team in position, waiting for signal. Raphael took a deep breath. His next move would be crucial. The entire plan depended on convincing Helena and Li Wei that he was cornered, defeated, and ready to accept his defeat with dignity. Before the signing, Helena said, regaining control of the situation, I think we should discuss the terms of your transition. Of course, Raphael agreed, keeping his voice deliberately subdued, but perhaps we could have a moment in private first. As husband and wife, I think you owe me at least that much. Helena hesitated for a moment, then nodded. 5 minutes, she said, following him into an adjacent conference room. As soon as the door closed, Raphael's smile disappeared. Where is the girl, Helena? Safe, she replied. And it will remain so if you do exactly as we agreed. And then, what happens to Sophia after I sign? A dangerous glint flashed through Helena's eyes. That's not your problem anymore, dear. Now, let's get back to the meeting and finish this with dignity, shall we? As tensions raged in the boardroom, Bianca approached the industrial warehouse where Sophia was being held. Jonas and his team had positioned themselves strategically around the premises, monitoring every move. 2 men at the main entrance, Jonas reported through the discreet communicator he'd given Bianca. 3 more inside the warehouse, our thermal sensors indicate. Bianca felt her heart race. After 5 years of living in the shadows, protecting Sophia from afar, she was finally about to face her fears head-on. The girl is in the second-floor office, Jonas continued. We have a clear view through the windows. She appears to be fine. A momentary relief ran through Bianca's body. Her daughter was alive and apparently unharmed. Now they just needed to execute the plan as agreed. Remember, Jonas said, when we give the signal, you have exactly 3 minutes to reach her. My men will create a diversion at the main entrance while I cover your approach via the emergency staircase. Bianca nodded, even though Jonas couldn't see her from his position. Her hands shook slightly, but her mind was clear. Years of surviving on the streets had taught her to control her fear, to turn it into focus. The signal came in the form of a series of controlled explosions in the parking lot, small charges Jonas had set to simulate a fire in the nearest parked car. Sure enough, the guards at the entrance rushed to check on the situation. Bianca moved quickly, taking advantage of the confusion to sneak to the emergency staircase. Years on the streets had also taught her to move silently, to become practically invisible when necessary. Reaching the second floor, she heard raised voices coming from the first floor. The distraction was working. Through the glass in the office door, she saw Sophia sitting in a chair, her hands tied loosely in front of her. A single guard stood with her, more concerned with his cell phone than with his prisoner. Now, Jonas whispered over the communicator. The office door flew open as one of Jonas's men, dressed as a maintenance worker, walked in carrying a fire extinguisher. Fire on the first floor, he shouted, creating instant panic. The guard, caught off guard, hesitated for a crucial moment, long enough for Bianca to enter through the other door and run to Sophia. "Mommy!" the little girl exclaimed, her eyes wide with surprise and joy. Bianca quickly untied her daughter's hands, while the fake employee kept the guard distracted. Sophia threw herself into his arms, and for a brief moment, all Bianca could feel was the warmth of her daughter's body, the familiar scent of her hair. "Oh, we need to go," she said softly, guiding Sophia toward the emergency exit. That's when they heard footsteps quickly climbing the main staircase. Raised voices were approaching. Apparently, someone had realized that the fire was a distraction. "This way," Jonas directed over the communicator. "Go down the back stairs. You'll have 30 seconds before they notice." Bianca and Sophia ran along the metal walkway that led to the emergency stairs. Behind them, screams and sounds of fighting echoed through the warehouse. Jonas's team was ensuring their escape. They ran down the steps as fast as they could, Sophia holding her mother's hand tightly. When they reached the ground floor, a car was already waiting for them, engine running. "Come in," Jonas commanded, holding the door open. Bianca pushed Sophia into the vehicle and jumped in. The car took off before she could even close the door completely. Through the rear window, he saw men emerging from the warehouse, some drawing weapons, but it was too late. The car was already turning the corner, plunging into the morning traffic. "We did it," Sophia whispered, still clinging to her mother. Bianca hugged her daughter tightly, silent tears streaming down her face. 5 years of fear, of separation, of constant fighting. It had all been worth it for this moment. "Where are we going?" asked Sophia. "To a safe place," Bianca replied, thinking of the apartment Jonas had prepared. "But first we need to do one more thing." She took the flash drive Raphael had given her out of her pocket. It was time to make sure the whole truth came out. Back in the council room, Raphael prepared for his final move. Helena had returned to her position beside Li Wei, both of them watching intently as he picked up the pen to sign the contract. "Before we proceed," Raphael said, his voice calm, "I'd like to do one last check on the document. Just a formality." He opened the laptop connected to the projector in the room, supposedly to display some points of the contract. In fact, he was opening an email he had just received from Bianca, a single word, "Done." "As you can see," he continued, browsing through the document, "Clause 47 sets out the terms of corporate transparency. It's a pretty standard edition." That's when her phone rang. Helena frowned. This wasn't part of the script she had so carefully planned. "Sorry," Raphael said, answering the speakerphone. "Yes?" "Mr. Muller." His secretary's voice sounded nervous. "There's a Globo News reporting team in the lobby. They say they've received information about serious irregularities involving Chen Industries and our company." Li Wei's face paled visibly. Helena stood up from her chair, her eyes fixed on Raphael. "What kind of irregularities?" she asked, trying to maintain her composure. As if answering his question, the screens of everyone's cell phones began to vibrate simultaneously. Breaking news notifications popped up in series. Corporate scandal. Chen Industries accused of international fraud. Fugitive Chinese executive operating under false identity. Corruption scheme involving large companies is revealed. Li Wei stood up abruptly, already typing on his phone. Helena stared at the notifications with an expression of growing horror. "What did you do?" she hissed at Raphael. "Me?" Raphael smiled calmly. "I just followed your advice, dear. I did what was necessary." The doors to the council chamber opened, admitting a team of federal police officers. Ahead of them, a female police officer flashed her badge. "Marcus Chen," she said, addressing Li Wei, "or would you prefer to be called Li Wei? We have a warrant for your arrest." Chaos broke out in the room. Councillors stood up in confusion, some trying to leave discreetly, others already on the phone with their lawyers. "That's absurd," Helena protested, but her voice betrayed her panic. "You have no proof." "In fact," Raphael interrupted, "we have all the evidence. Every email, every bank transfer, every forged document. Everything is now in the hands of the proper authorities." He turned to Helena, who was staring at him with a mixture of hatred and disbelief. "Oh, and speaking of evidence, you should check your phone. I just got a very interesting message about Sophia." Helena picked up the phone with trembling hands. On the screen, a photo showed Bianca and Sophia together, safe next to Jonas. "Impossible," she muttered. "Do you know what your mistake was, Helena?" Raphael asked as the officers handcuffed Li Wei. "Thinking that power is just a matter of manipulation and force. Sometimes true power lies in doing the right thing." The police officer approached Helena. "Mrs. Muller, you are also under arrest. We have sufficient evidence of your involvement in all the schemes." As Helena was led out of the room, she gave Raphael one last look, no longer one of hatred but of deep, bitter sadness. "You destroyed everything," she said softly. "No," he replied. "You destroyed it. I just chose to rebuild it the right way." The company headquarters was bustling with federal police, journalists and stunned employees. Amid the chaos, Raphael watched from his office window as Helena and Li Wei were led to police cars parked at the entrance to the building. "Mr. Müller?" Pietra, his secretary, appeared at the door. "Detective Clara would like to speak with you again." Raphael nodded, straightening his tie before heading down the hallway. The police chief was waiting for him in the conference room, accompanied by two investigators who were typing furiously on their laptops. "Congratulations on the operation," she said, extending her hand. "Without your collaboration, we would never have been able to dismantle such a complex scheme." "I should have acted sooner," Raphael replied, sitting down. "How many people were harmed because I chose to turn a blind eye?" The officer consulted her notes. "We have identified at least 7 other companies that have fallen victim to the same scheme in the past 3 years. In each case, the modus operandi was identical, and the others involved. We're making simultaneous arrests in 3 states," she explained. "Executives, advisors, high-ranking officials who were actively involved in the fraud. But what's most interesting is the international connections we're uncovering." She slid a folder across the desk. Inside were photos of Helena in meetings with various businessmen over the years. In each image, Li Wei, or Marcus Chen, was discreetly in the background. His wife was more than just an accomplice, police chief continued. She was the architect of the entire operation in South America. She used her position and contacts to identify target companies, lay the groundwork, and make sure everything looked perfectly legal. Raphael closed the folder, feeling the weight of each revelation. "What about Bianca and Sophia?" "They are safe," the police officer assured. "We have already collected their statements. Dr. Andrade's courage in keeping the evidence all these years was fundamental to the case." A young police officer hurried into the room, handing the female officer a tablet. She quickly read the contents, her eyebrows rising in surprise. "We have just received the first reports from the forensic examination of the seized computers," she said. "The scheme was even bigger than we imagined. We found evidence of bid rigging, bribery of public officials, even plans to interfere in government decisions. How did we not notice before?" "Because they were very good at hiding it," the police chief replied. "Every false document was perfectly crafted, every transfer carefully disguised. Without the evidence Bianca kept and her help in exposing it all, we might never have found out." Raphael stood up and walked to the window. Down below, more police cars arrived, while reporters jostled each other trying to get the best shot. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we begin the most difficult phase," the delegate replied. "Rebuilding. Your company will suffer a significant blow when all the evidence comes to light. The market will not be kind." "I know," Raphael said, "but maybe this is exactly what we needed. A chance to start over, to do things right this time." The delegate smiled slightly. "Do you already have a plan in mind?" Raphael took a crumpled business card out of his pocket, the same one Bianca had given him days ago when it all started. "Indeed I do," he replied. "I think it's time to bring back someone who should never have left." Her phone buzzed, a text from Bianca with a photo. She and Sophia were sitting in a cafe, genuine smiles on their faces for the first time in years. The text simply said, "Thank you for helping us start over." Raphael put his phone away, feeling a mixture of sadness and hope. The price of truth had been high, his marriage, his reputation, the trust of many. But for the first time in years, he felt like he was on the right path. A week later, Raphael's office was practically empty. Most of his personal belongings had been packed away, leaving only a few photographs on the wall and a spectacular view of the city. "Are you sure about this?" asked Anton Salas, the chairman of the board, watching as Raphael packed his last items into a box. "Absolutely," Raphael replied. "The company needs a clean slate, without any connection to the past." Salas nodded slowly. "The board approved your suggestion for the new compliance department, but I still think you could stay and help with the transition." "No," Raphael said firmly. "It's better this way. Besides, I have other plans." As if on cue, Bianca appeared in the doorway, wearing a well-cut suit, a far cry from the woman he had encountered on the sidewalk outside Fasano. "Are you ready?" she asked. Raphael smiled, picking up his box. More than ever. Together they walked down to the lobby of the building. Outside, a TV station van still kept watch, waiting for further developments in the scandal that had dominated headlines for days. "Is Sophia excited about the move?" Raphael asked as they walked. "Very much," Bianca replied. "She can't wait to go back to school. She wants to be a lawyer, you know. She said she wants to fight for justice, like her mother." They arrived at a nearby cafe, where they had arranged to meet Jonas. The former security chief was already waiting for them, along with a man Raphael recognized as Martin Weber, one of the country's most respected corporate governance consultants. "The documents are ready," Weber said, opening his briefcase. "We just need the final signatures." Raphael looked at the papers in front of him, the articles of association for his new business ethics and compliance consulting firm, a venture focused on helping other companies avoid the same mistakes that nearly destroyed his. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Bianca asked. "Starting from scratch won't be easy." "Nothing worth having is easy," Raphael replied, picking up his pen. "Besides, I'm not starting over alone, am I?" Bianca smiled, picking up her own pen. Jonas and Weber did the same. One by one, they signed the documents that would begin the new phase of their lives. "Have you decided on a name for the company yet?" Jonas asked. Raphael exchanged a look with Bianca before answering, "Integrity Consulting, because that's what the market needs most today, people willing to do the right thing no matter the cost." As they celebrated over coffee, Raphael observed his new partners, Jonas, with his experience in corporate security, Weber, with his knowledge of governance, and Bianca, who had sacrificed everything for the truth and was now ready to use her experience to prevent other companies from following the same dark path. His phone buzzed with a notification, another headline about the case. Helena Muller and Marcus Chen to remain in pretrial detention, judge rules. He ignored the news. The past was over. It was time to look to the future. "Where do we start?" asked Bianca, already in professional mode. "From the beginning," Raphael replied, "building a solid foundation based on real principles, not on appearances. It's a long process, but it's worth it," she added. Raphael nodded, looking out the cafe window at the city that stretched out before him. Somewhere out there, other companies were facing the same dilemmas, the same temptations that had nearly destroyed him. Now he had the chance to make a difference, to turn his experience into something positive. It was a new beginning, and this time he would do everything right. 6 months had passed since the founding of Integridade Consultoria. The office, which occupied 2 floors of a commercial building, could no longer comfortably accommodate the entire team that was growing every month. Raphael watched from the window of his new office as Sophia, now an intern during the school holidays, helped organize documents with the same determination he saw in Bianca. The girl had blossomed in the last few months, transforming the trauma of the past into strength for the future. "Meeting in 5 minutes," Bianca announced, entering the room with a stack of reports. "The Omega engineering people are arriving." Omega would be its biggest client yet, a construction company that, after a minor scandal, had decided to completely overhaul its governance practices. "How's the team's mood?" Raphael asked, adjusting his tie. "Anxious but confident," Bianca replied. "Jonas finished the security audit yesterday. Weber is reviewing the final details of the compliance program. We're ready." Raphael smiled, remembering how it all began. The idea that had seemed absurd at first, a consultancy focused exclusively on business ethics, had proven not only viable, but necessary. The market, still reeling from the impact of the Chen Industries scandal, was more receptive than ever to real change. "Dad!" Sophia came running into the room, a newspaper in her hands. In the last few months, she had started calling Raphael Dad, something that had happened naturally without pressure or expectations. "What's wrong, honey?" "Look at this." She held out the newspaper, pointing to a headline. "Former Chen Industries executives sentenced. Helena Müller and Marcus Chen get 15 years. Raphael picked up the newspaper, reading the news quickly. The trial had ended faster than expected, thanks in large part to the amount of irrefutable evidence. "How are you?" Bianca asked softly, knowing full well the weight that news still held for him. "Well," he replied, and for the first time in a long time it was true. "It's the closure we needed." The intercom rang, the receptionist announcing the arrival of the Omega executives. Sophia quickly tidied up her makeshift desk, assuming a professional demeanor that made both adults smile. "You know," Bianca said as they walked to the conference room, "sometimes I wonder if this is all real. If we can really turn this around." Raphael paused, looking around. The office was a hive of activity, consultants discussing cases, analysts reviewing documents, a positive energy that contrasted sharply with the heavy atmosphere of his old firm. "It's real," he said. "We've built something different here, something that really matters." In the conference room, Jonas and Weber were already in place, presentations ready. The team had grown to include corporate law experts, financial auditors, and even organizational psychologists, all committed to the mission of transforming the local corporate culture. "Before we begin," Raphael said, watching the Omega executives settle in, "I'd like to share a story with you. A story about choices, consequences, and the importance of doing the right thing, even when it seems impossible." Bianca smiled, recognizing the words. This was how they started all their projects now, not with spreadsheets or elaborate presentations, but with the raw truth of their own experiences. "6 months ago," he continued, "I was on the other side of that table. I was the man who had everything and yet nothing. Because success without integrity is an illusion, and sometimes we have to lose everything to find our true purpose." The Omega executives listened intently, some taking notes, others simply absorbing every word. Raphael could see in their eyes the same recognition he had seen in so many others, the understanding that they were on the verge of a fundamental transformation. Through the conference room window, the afternoon sun lit up the capital, casting long shadows between the skyscrapers. Somewhere out there, other companies faced the same dilemmas, the same temptations. But now there was a different path, an alternative to the vicious cycle of corruption and greed. The university auditorium was packed on that spring morning. Students, professors, and industry professionals gathered to attend the inaugural lecture of the Business Ethics and Compliance course, a joint initiative between the university and Integridade Consultoria. Raphael adjusted the microphone as he looked around at the young, expectant faces in front of him. Beside him, Bianca organized her notes, ready for her part of the presentation. In the front row, Sophia smiled proudly, sitting between Jonas and Weber. "When I was asked to speak about business ethics," Raphael began, "my first impulse was to refuse. After all, what right do I have to talk about this, after spending years ignoring clear signs of corruption in my own company?" An attentive silence took over the auditorium. But then I realized that's exactly why I need to speak out. Because my story isn't just about mistakes and consequences. It's about redemption, about the real possibility of change. He paused, his eyes meeting Sophia's in the front row. "A year ago, I was the kind of executive who put results above principles. The kind of man who ignored important warnings because they were inconvenient. The kind of leader who allowed good people to be punished for doing the right thing." Bianca smiled softly beside him, remembering their first conversation on the sidewalk of Fasano. "But then I met someone who taught me the true meaning of integrity," he continued, gesturing toward Bianca. "Someone who, even after losing everything for standing up for the truth, never stopped fighting for what was right. The next 2 hours flew by as they shared their story. Not just the dramatic events they had experienced, but the lessons learned, the changes implemented, the successes and challenges of building a truly ethical company. When they opened the floor for questions, hands went up all over the auditorium. A young student was the first to speak. How do you deal with companies that seek consultancy just for appearance, with no real intention of change? Excellent question, Bianca replied, taking the microphone. In fact, that's one of the first things we assess in potential clients. We've developed a rigorous process for assessing leadership's real commitment to ethical change. Another student raised his hand. What about costs? Many companies claim that being 100% ethical is financially unfeasible. Raphael smiled. Do you know the true cost of a lack of ethics? Ask Chen Industries, which lost billions in market value. Ask the executives who are now in jail. Ethics is not a cost. It is an investment. The questions continued, each time more profound and thoughtful. It was clear that this new generation of professionals was genuinely interested in making a difference. After the lecture, while they were talking to some students, an elderly lady approached timidly. "Mr. Muller," she said, her voice breaking. "My son worked at your old company. He tried to report wrongdoing and was fired for it. Today he finally felt vindicated when he saw this transformation." Raphael felt the weight of those words. How many other lives had been affected by wrong decisions in the past, but also how many could be positively impacted from then on? "It's not about revenge," he replied gently. "It's about transformation, about creating an environment where your son and others like him can work without fear of doing the right thing." Sophia approached, carrying a stack of forms. "Look, we already have 50 applications for the compliance internship program." Bianca hugged her daughter proudly. "And each of these interns will multiply this knowledge in their future companies." Raphael watched the two of them, feeling that familiar sense of purpose grow stronger. The seed they had planted was growing, spreading, taking root in fertile ground. 1 year after the lecture at USP, Integridade Consultoria celebrated its most recent achievement, the inauguration of its new headquarters, an entire building designed with the highest standards of sustainability and transparency. On the garden, terrace decorated for the opening party, Raphael watched the sunset with Bianca. Sophia, now a first-year law student, chatted animatedly with a group of interns from the program she had helped create. "Can you believe how everything has changed?" Bianca asked, her gaze sweeping around the room full of clients, partners, and friends. "Sometimes it feels like a dream," Raphael replied. "But then I remember where we came from, what we went through to get here." Jonas approached, accompanied by Weber and some of the consultancy's early clients. "The numbers from the latest impact report are in," he announced, showing off his tablet. "Over 200 companies transformed, 3,000 professionals trained, and 0 cases of retaliation against whistleblowers. Most importantly," Weber added, "we are creating a new corporate culture. Other consultancies are following our model, multiplying the impact." Raphael smiled, remembering his old life, the executive he used to be. How distant that existence based only on numbers and appearances seemed now. "Dad," Sophia called, approaching with a group of young people. "I want to introduce you to the new participants of the New Dawn project. They are the children of corporate whistleblowers like me." He greeted each of the young people, listening to their stories, seeing in their eyes the same determination he had found in Bianca years ago. Each of them carried similar scars, but also the same will to change reality. "You know," Raphael said, addressing the young people, "there is a phrase that has become the unofficial motto of our company. True success is not measured by what we achieve, but by what we inspire in others." Bianca joined the group, completing the thought, "And each of you is living proof of this, because your stories, just like ours, show that it is possible to rebuild, start over, transform pain into purpose." The party continued into the night, but it was no ordinary celebration of corporate success. It was a celebration of something bigger, living proof that integrity was not just a fancy word in corporate reports, but a viable path, a possible choice. Later, when most of the guests had left, Raphael found a letter on his desk. It was from an executive at a large company, thanking him for giving him the courage to report a corruption scheme he had uncovered. Your story has shown me that doing the right thing is not just an option. It is the only option that allows us to sleep in peace, the letter read. Raphael kept the letter along with others he had received over the years. Each one was a reminder of the true meaning of success, of the true value of the transformation they had begun. On the balcony of the office, he hugged Bianca and Sophia, his family not by blood, but by choice. Together, they looked out over the city that never sleeps, knowing that somewhere out there others were finding the courage to do the right thing, inspired by the example they had. Say it, because sometimes the greatest act of courage is not facing our enemies but our own mistakes, and true power lies not in keeping secrets, but in revealing truths that transform lives.